Hi, everybody. I apologize for the delay. I had a really good opportunity today to sit in on a really good informational meeting with some of our tribal leaders and just talking about change, talking about positive change and how we can really make things happen. And yeah, so it ran a little longer than I expected, and then I had to get back into a service area. So as you can see, I am driving. Hey, Natalia. So yeah, so our guest has also been waiting, and we're like, no, I don't want to, reschedule or anything like that. So we were trying to work it out to make sure that I'm trying to see, I'm trying to add. For some reason, it's not letting me add her in. I feel like every single time I have these technical difficulties, and I'm like, by now you would think that I would have it together, but it is what it is. So, anyways, I'm just kind of waiting for her to pop on. As soon as she pops on, I will add her in. I guess a little bit of a recap over the last week, and I apologize. Last week I had to postpone. Just wasn't really feeling it. I wasn't feeling that great, and I knew I can't do much good for others if I'm not doing good for myself. So everybody, just keep that in mind. I know a lot of us want to help, and but if we're ourselves, then we're kind of limited. So I am adding Miss Margeaux. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. We're both in our cars. We were talking about that. So this is Margeaux walking out, and I will let her introduce herself a little more. As usual, I always provide a brief disclaimer because a lot of things that are talked about in these roundtable sessions can be traumatizing, can just kind of make us relive some things that we've been through. And so I always want to let people know that you are not obligated to stay. If you feel like you're having a hard time and you can't, it's totally okay. You can hop off, and if anybody needs any extra support, I'm here. I know a lot of our past guests have also offered their support. So I always want to throw that out there because I want to be mindful of other people. And then let me see. Usually we do a short prayer. And so, Margeaux, can I ask you to just please grace us with a short prayer before we start? Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. Um, Thank you, Father, for another day, Lord. Thank you for healing. Thank you for truth, Father. We just thank you for the space that we've been gifted to share your love and your light, Father. We just ask that you just open the hearts of everybody that's listening, Father, and that you just let them hear what you want them to hear. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much, Margeaux. So I know that you have another commitment here at 8 o'clock. So again, it's my fault. I apologize. Um, but yeah, so I just want to welcome you in, and thank you so much for saying yes. And I'm excited to hear your story. I've heard from other people that you have a very amazing story. So right, I will let you take the mic and just
All
do the thing.
right. Hi, I'm Margeaux Walking Elk. I'm an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. I am Dakota Hunkpapa. My Dakota name is Iktomiwi. I am 41 years old. I have three sons, Drayden, Dace, and Jeffrey. They're 21, 16, and 15. I grew up in 48, kennel. I mean, just the res. I my parents are Rosalind Buffalo Boy, and my dad is Clifford Walking Elk. My mom, I grew up. I have five siblings: Kurt, Callie, Carrie, Sammy. Um, and then my dad has well, my dad has more kids. Yeah, there's quite a few on that side, but yeah. So I have a big family. I grew up and you guys, I love my parents. I mean, they did the best they could, you guys. I have a good dad. I have a good mom, you guys. They did the best they could with the knowledge and the understanding that they had at the time, right? And, um, but I grew up in an alcoholic home. You know, I grew up, there was a lot of, um, chaos, right? Chaos, violence. I, um, I have a lot of traumas, you guys, in my life. I was sexually abused as a child, where I caused me to block out a few years of my childhood. And so I really don't have, yeah, that part, childhood, but around, I went through that. And then I remembered around the age of 9 or 10, you guys, I remember like, and this might get a little like, I don't know, I don't want to trigger anybody or I don't want to do too much, you know, but like, so I at the age of 9 or 10, you guys, I started using drugs and alcohol, but I also was like around like that age, 8, 9, 10 years old, I started there had other friends, and then we would be role modeling, right? These behaviors that we learned, you guys, and this would be the shame and the guilt and the stuff that I carried throughout my whole life, you know, that played a huge part in the route I took in my life. So I started using drugs and alcohol to cope with life at a very young age. I started going in and out of jail institutions as well. And I didn't have too many people like to come alongside me and, you know, to like give me that emotional support, the love that I needed at that time, you guys. So what was shown to me was, you know, anger, you know, how we're taught, you know, don't you're nobody ever taught me like the emotional, you know, emotional piece, right? Like it's okay to feel this on, you know, this was wrong, right? Like this, what happened to me was wrong. You know, I didn't know that, you know, and it was just like a thing, you know, I tried to hide. And I always thought there was something wrong with me, you guys. I always thought you know, the shame, I had deep rooted shame. So I started drinking at that age, in and out of the institutions. I became sexually promiscuous at a young age, you guys. I remember, you know, and I don't know, you guys, I'm transparent, so forgive me if I just say stuff, man. But like, so like I was sexually promiscuous at a young age, you know, 13 years old, you guys. I remember getting letters from the IHS where, you know, I had contracted, you know, sexually transmitted diseases. And, you know, instead of somebody like reaching out and saying, oh, look at this girl, like she needs help, right? Like that's wrong for like a little 12-year-old girl to have this, right? And instead I got beat up, you know what I mean? Like instead I would get abused and beat up. And so my pattern was like abuse and rejection, right? And I associated that with love. So this like is a theme throughout my whole life, you know, my whole high school years. I was into drinking, and I would get into, you know, not healthy relationships, and because I didn't know how to give myself the love and the respect, right? And so I would engage in like all kinds of stuff, you guys. Fighting was, I like to fight. I was an angry kid, you guys, and I don't know if you know, the stuff I did during high school, you know, I was violent and I didn't care, you know, that's what I did. I like to fight. And going in and out of jails, institutions. I was court ordered away to boarding school um, during the ninth grade. I continued this pattern, you know, all throughout my life. But for some reason, I was blessed by a creator with education. Right, education came easy for me, you guys. I still managed to graduate high school at a young age. I went through, you know, I've experienced a lot of stuff in high school, you guys. Death, more trauma, you know, went through incest, you know, thinking like that was okay, you know. getting into unhealthy relationships where I would allow myself to be beat up and taken advantage of, because I thought that was okay. Um, and then I would graduate. I remember going to my high school graduation, you guys, and I was drunk, right? Like that's just what you did, this is was just a normal thing. Like, oh, we drank to celebrate everything. We got high to celebrate everything, it's like I don't know, it was kind of like a backwards thing, and it just became a normal thing. I graduated high school intoxicated. I went on to college at Black Hills State University, where I got into meth addiction. And I remember I was in an abusive relationship then. I was pregnant with my first son. And I didn't use meth with him, but I smoked marijuana, and I remember like being pregnant, and his dad, would be very abusive, and I would be getting beat up while I was pregnant, and I would still stay, I was begging this man for love, and I was just desperate for that, and so I left when my son was born. I remember going to the hospital, and we were here in Bismarck then, and then we went to Spearfish. But when my oldest son was born, it was so crazy, you guys. The lights, I remember the lights in Bismarck being like a thunderstorm came, right, and the lights, electricity got knocked out, and my water broke, and it was June 25th, 2001, June 25th, my son was born. And I remember like the power getting knocked out of Bismarck, and it was just a significant night, right? And but it was also like his dad was up on methamphetamine, and it was just a mixture of stuff, right? And anyway, when he was 4 years old, I remember getting beat up, and he stood in front of me, and that was the last straw for me. I left and I walked away from that relationship. I came back to the reservation, and I still carrying, no outlet for the shame that I was already carrying. And then on top of all this other stuff that I had, I got into another relationship, right? This time the man was very nice, didn't abuse me, you guys, and but I became the abuser, right? Like I didn't know how to receive love, right? I didn't know how to give that, right? I didn't, and it was weird towards me, it was weird. Like, geez, he bought me flowers, he treated me so good, and then here I go, like I was beating him up, and I was just, being crazy. And then I got into my opiate addiction in that relationship. And I remember fentanyl played a big part in my life. Fentanyl, Oxycontin. I started snorting pills. My addiction then switched from, I still did meth, but like it was more, I added in that, so it was both now. And then I got pregnant with my second son, where I did methamphetamine with this pregnancy. And I remember I never grew up like traditional in the traditional cultural ways, but I always had this natural like pull towards it, right? Like so I was on meth, I couldn't stop, you guys, and I knew what I was doing was wrong. And so I remember they had a sweat lodge ceremony up at the mission school, and I remember going there, and I was pregnant, like 6 months pregnant. And I remember I get in there and I start praying, and I told them, like that what I was doing, and to pray for my son because I didn't want him to like suffer for what I was doing, right? And I remember that sweat lodge ceremony was so powerful. When the guy, I think he was from Canada, I don't recall his name, but I remember everything that happened in that sweat lodge, and it was really powerful. And when that was done, that guy told me that they told him that my son was going to be okay, and I was really afraid when he was born, that he was not going to have, all his organs, or something was going to be wrong, right? I just had that fear. And I even didn't, I'm going to admit that I never had, like, when he was born, I was afraid and so much guilt, you guys, that I couldn't have that intimate, attachment with him, you know, it's really sad. But today, like, he's healthy, he's growing, and it's one of the best relationships that I have, like with my son. Like, we're so close, and he has a heart of gold. And sometimes I'm like, is he even my kid? Because he's like totally opposite, man. Like, he's responsible, he doesn't do drugs, alcohol. He has like no like he's not even curious, right? And I'm just like, are you sure that's my kid? You know, and but I was blessed with that, and he has such a wise mind, and I learned so much from him. And so I have him. I didn't sober up. I went straight back to my opiate addiction right from the hospital because I have a back problem. So my doctor prescribed me these pills now, right? And of course, my addiction tells me that, oh, well, the doctor's giving them to me, so it's okay, you know, like, and that's how I justified that, you know, that's how I justified that addiction and just took off with it. I started using these pills. Next thing you know, I started going different, you know, doctor shopping state to state, you know, and then it just took off. It went from, you know, all that to morphine, and then I started using IV drug using. Um, and then I started IV drug using too, morphine and all that, and it just went and took from there. And then I got out of that relationship, and then I met my third kid's dad, where where I got back into the pills and the meth, and the IV drug using was really bad. Then I had my third son, which I didn't do meth with him, but the pills were bad. He was born withdrawing from opiates. Um, and I remember like for 3 days, like, you know, in the hospital, like the doctor told me like he was gonna withdraw because she was prescribing me these hydrocodones while I was pregnant. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just, you know, I never took them as prescribed. I mean, that's where, you know, I was wrong. Like I would snort, you know, 20 pills a day or whatever, you know, and I thought it was okay because the doctor gave them to me, so they got to be safe. Um, so I did that. Had my last son. Didn't sober up, right? I had no intentions on trying to be sober, you guys. I didn't have a rock bottom yet, you know, although I was going through all this stuff. So that took back off. I started using methamphetamines again, and this time I started like engaging in like a lot of criminal activity. I was starting to steal things. I was starting to steal. I was starting to do whatever it took to get the meth, to get the pills. Um, and then I lost my kids while I sent my kids back down to the reservation with my mom, and then I ended up catching felony charges, drug possession, paraphernalia. Um, I went into prison for the first time, and I remember like that still wasn't my rock bottom. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't my rock bottom. I was just angry and pissed off, and I just had no intention on trying to change. So I went in there. I think I sat like 18 months my first time in prison. And I don't know, like for some reason, you guys, like jail, I didn't really care. You know, I didn't really care because I was in and out of the institution since I was 12 years old. You know, really didn't bother me. So I went into prison, and I thought, you know, I was lost. You know, I had no sense of identity, and I thought, you know, running the streets, trying to get this street rep, and trying to be cool, and trying to like find that acceptance, you know, and whatever. So thinking I was, you know, drug dealer of the year or whatever, I thought, I'm not sure, you know. And but anyway, so I was in prison now, get out again. I was only out for like 3 months. My meth addiction started right in after I got out. I mean, so I didn't get my kids back. I had no intention on getting them back at all. Started in again. I was out maybe for a few months again. I went back into prison the second time, and this time my sister Carrie died of this disease, right? Of alcoholism at the age of 36. I didn't get to see her, you know, the last 5 years of her life, and um I think, I mean, looking back now in hindsight, like I really do think like Creator blessed me and placed me, you know, I was incarcerated for those 5 years. And I really do look at it as a blessing because I think that I wouldn't be sitting here, you know, if I wasn't where I was during that time. And I had to be there, right? I had to be set apart. And that was the pain that drew me in. You know, I like to say that. I think that's the pain that finally like that was my surrender. You know, I knew like I had to be, that was my rock bottom. My sister was kind of like, she was kind of like my, I don't know how to describe us. She was all like this peace. I don't know if you know Carrie or not, Brooklyn, but like she was like this peace loving, you know, hippie, you know, like old lady who lived in the shoe, you know, like she was just like all, you know, her thing was peace signs and aliens and stuff, you know, and anyway, like she loved me. She loved me unconditionally, and like she took care of me. And we were kind of like, you know, yin and yang, right? She was like my voice of reason, you know. She was always I'm always trying to, you know, I was acting crazy, and then she would always be like, you know, calming me down and whatever. But I remember when she died, something changed me, you know. I was in prison, angry, you know. I got thrown in the holes that I got thrown in the SMU, the segregation unit. And I remember the present I had a spiritual experience in there, and the presence of God like fell on me. And I remember like I didn't know what that was, right? Like I didn't know like the love of God, right? Like anyway, I had like a heart change, you know. I got out of there. They sent me to Tompkins Rehabilitation Center, the over in Jamestown, and I remember being there, and it was like I wanted to change, and my pain started becoming greater than my fear that I had of change, right? Because like I had so much fear. I ran on fear my whole life. I didn't know there was another way, right? And I had no clue because I had denial. I had denial my whole life of everything due to like my sexual traumas throughout my whole life. It was something that I just it was it was a good wall that I built, right? The denial piece, and I didn't know how to like face that and to feel the pain of that. I had no idea that that was going to affect every relationship I had in my life, right? I didn't know how to be vulnerable with people. I didn't know how to let people in, and I didn't know how to accept myself, you know? So I'm sitting in Tompkins, and I want to do this change, and um, I started, you know, going to church. I started reading the Bible, and the first few years of my recovery, that's what it was for me. I started seeking Jesus. I started learning, you know, about him, right? And so that keeps me sober. And as I'm going, I get out, I get to the halfway house. I get put into a secure unit at BTC. I get they let me out. I was out for one day, and then I took off, right? I went on the run. Um and I just think God is so funny because like I went on the run. I was planning this trip, you know, I was going to Montana. I'm going to get meth, and I'm going to get guns, and you know, and then I was only out one night, and the cops caught me, right? And I go back into prison for another year for the third time, you guys. And this time during that year, I finally like I finally I don't know. I finally had enough, right? I finally had enough of jail. I finally had enough of prison. I remember my mom saying to me, you know, like, doesn't this get old? And for some reason, like, that stuck in my head, right? Like, I was like, geez, you know, and maybe it is getting old now, you know, I'm 30, what, 38 years old, and I'm still, you know, sitting in prison, you know, and so I remember like trying to do recovery, whatnot. I get out of there, go to center. Um, I'm doing Bible studies, mind you, but I relapsed again when I get to center. I relapsed, and um, I remember going back to center, and they were telling me, you know, I was telling them, I was like, I don't even want to be here. You know, I relapsed on heroin and I relapsed on meth. And I remember telling them, you know, like, I don't even want to be here. If you're going to send me back to prison, you know, do it now, whatever. And they didn't. They put me on restrictions, you guys. And there's other things that I did during this, like throughout my whole like addiction, you guys. I'm not proud. I've had 3 abortions. You know, I've had, you know, numerous. I took part in numerous other things. You know, with you know doing things that I'm not proud of. You know, I've hurt a lot of people. And So I get there and I relapse and I get pregnant all on the same day, you guys. And you know what I mean? And then from from a guy that I was supposed to be with his brother even, and man, I was such a, I don't know. And and but yeah, so I'm going through all that, and I remember having this abortion when I was sober, you guys, and and it was the most, like, the first two I was high, right? I was high, I just did it, you know? I just, it didn't care, you know, I was snorting pills and shooting up meth, you know, while I was doing it, so it didn't bother me. But this one did. It messed me up, man. And but I was able to stay sober, and I get back to center, you know, and I'm recovering from this, and I get out I get out of there June of 2017, or May of 2017. I get out, I get an apartment. I'm working two jobs, Taco John's and the Dollar Tree. Um, I don't get my kids back because they're down in boarding school in Pier. I don't get them back because I'm not sure yet if I even want to stay sober, right? I get my oldest is 16 years old, and he was starting to like experiment with drugs and stuff. So I get him back, and it was the most awkward thing, you guys. Like, it was the most awkward thing. I didn't know this kid. I wasn't in his life for 8 years, and previous to that, you guys, I was high and I was an abusive mother. Um, I was physically, you know, abusive towards him, and probably emotionally too, you know, because at that time, like, I didn't, he had to behave perfectly, right? Because what are you guys going to think about me if my kid doesn't behave perfect? You know what I mean? So he wasn't able to make mistakes. He wasn't able to be a kid, you guys. And I didn't know how to be a kid. You know, I didn't know how a kid was supposed to be, um, due to my own stuff. Like, so I just didn't know. And I didn't know how to raise a child. So me and him have this like awkward relationship. We're together for a year in this two-bedroom apartment. I'm trying to get to know him. I'm trying to, you know, deal with my stuff. I'm trying to learn how to be emotionally available and present for my son while he's trying to struggle with his addiction, right? But I just keep seeking God. I keep going. I keep praying, right? I keep, you know, following God and getting to know him and allowing myself to like heal and feel, and it works out, you guys. It works out. I stay sober a year after my last relapse. My last relapse was June 17th, 2017. That was the last time I used drugs or anything. And I remember my nephew and my niece that day, my little sister, this was before my little sister passed away. My little sister Sammy also died of this disease too. Um, but they all came, and I remember looking at them, and I was like, you know, this is not, you know, I don't want this to go on, you know. And so I remember going to sleep, and that was the last time I used drugs. But my son's come back around, it was a year, I was a year sober, and then I bring my other two back. So I have all three of my kids under the same roof, you know, and here I am thinking, you know, oh, it's going to be perfect, you know, my kids and whatever, you guys. The first year with all my kids home, it was great, right? It was like the white picket fence, and but little did I know, you guys, you can't wear a mask longer than a year, right? Um, and my kids started behaviors, and my youngest kid starts acting out, and um my other kid was like an introvert, they call him, right? He kept everything inside. And I'm learning about like the dynamics of a dysfunctional family, right? And I had this in my family with my children. And so my youngest kid starts getting in trouble. And anyway, we start getting into counseling, and that was the most awkward thing ever, Brooke. Like, we did family counseling, and I remember thinking like, oh, you know, like, oh, what the fuck, you know, this is crazy, you know. And I felt like I was just like naked in front of the world to see my dysfunction, right? And like, but it was the best thing ever. And like, well, now looking back, it was, but it was so uncomfortable. But my kids, so we're going, and I'm sober, staying sober. I get into college, um, and that's God too. Like, I went to United Tribes College. That was the first place that I got my first felony. I committed I took part in a stabbing and got my first felony charges at United Tribes, and they let me back into school there. So I started pursuing my associate's degree, and I graduate. I go on to Minot State. I just recently graduated from Minot State with my bachelor's degree in addiction studies. And I get into EMDR trauma therapy. I work the steps of AA, you guys. I've been blessed with a great job at Good Road Recovery Center, and I work for Dakota Foundation, you guys. Like this, and my sons, like they're all doing good. I have my oldest boy is sober now. My youngest is kind of struggling on the fence. Um, but and my middle child, he doesn't struggle at all. But we all go to therapy. We all have therapists at Dakota Trauma. And I do EMDR for myself and my stuff. Like I was doing it once a week, and then I try to fill myself up with recovery, right? I try to learn from everybody and try to take whatever I could. I try to give back when I could too. I felt like I've been slacking on service work because, I have school, I have work, I have, all this other stuff, being a mother. Um, so I try to do things. That's why I was kind of excited to do this, although I was nervous and I'm, yeah, and, but yeah, so I'm just really grateful to give back and have this opportunity. And thank you, Brooklyn, for asking me. I don't know. I think that's pretty much all I got. I don't know if that was in a nutshell or not.
It was good. I mean, you've had a lot go on in your life, and honestly, like I honestly I've been wanting to ask you for a long time, but I'm like, oh, I get nervous too when I ask people if they, would be interested in being a guest, because it's I don't know what my thing is, but like I am afraid of rejection. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, I know where kind of it comes from. Um, so it is one of my fears too, So I told you, I'm like I get nervous too, like every time before we
Yeah.
hop on, and so sometimes in the beginning I'm like, kind of stuttering, and I'm just like, over my words, and so, but man, I feel really blessed that you said yes, and that you joined me this evening, even though I was late. So, but and it worked out, and I think it,
Yeah.
it worked out the way it needed to work out. So I just I do have a question. So I always try to keep in mind, I usually am writing things down because I'm at my desk, and since we both were in the car today, I have my notebook. But as far as like overdose, have you ever experienced that yourself?
Yeah. Several times I've experienced overdose from heroin. Um, and you would think that would be a person's rock bottom, right? Like you would think like it would be scary, but it wasn't. I mean, like I woke up, I remember I was an IV drug user and I was shooting up heroin outside and outside in a car, and I remember like falling out and I woke up and it was I remember feeling so sick my body, but I pissed my pants even, when I come to, and I
Yeah.
was like just vomiting and vomiting and vomiting. But here's my disease. This is how my disease works, right? I'm laying there ODing off of heroin, and what do? I shoot up methamphetamine to bring me out of the heroin
Oh,
overdose.
okay. Is
So it's like, yeah,
Yeah. What? So if it's okay if I ask, like,
yeah,
what what is that? Okay, so I have a lot of family members, um, of my clients that ask. They're like, man, they've overdosed, however many times. Don't you think that that should like scare them to want to change or get better? And and sometimes I don't really have the answer because I don't know that experience myself, and it's just like sometimes that's not enough. You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
scary because you don't know, you know, if or when it's going to happen again,
yeah.
and it could be the ultimate, and that's scary
Yes.
for
And
families.
like in hindsight now, looking back, we were just talking about this. I don't remember me and who, but we were talking about the how when we were in our addiction, like that thought never crossed my mind. Like, oh, I might die from this shot, or oh, this might be
Mm,
my last time shooting up, or when I overdosed, it was just like it was no big deal, right? I just got up, um, felt sick, and got high again. Like So it's not like, you stop and think like, geez, this is bad. Maybe I should stop. My disease doesn't tell me things like that, Um, I feel like my disease is just constantly looking for more and more and more, and it doesn't know how to stop. I didn't have I was lacking, right? The power, creator, in the middle of my recovery now is God, right? And he fills me up and fills that void, right? If I'm not staying connected to him, I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a real junkie and a drunk, right? Like if I have these other behaviors, right? I seek other things to fill me up, whether they'd be materialistic, before it was like Amazon, I get a bunch of stuff from Amazon, and then otherwise I would engage in like toxic relationships, right? I got into a relationship for the last 3 years, in and out. It wasn't very good for me, but I stayed there. Um, so it was either like men, materialism, food, all different stuff. But I had to come to the realization that it was my thinking, right? It was where I was going when I would become when things would bother me. And so that's my disease. And like when it does that in my active addiction, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay high. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get a drink, and I'm not going to, and it doesn't care who it hurts. You know what I mean? Like this disease is selfish, and um you don't think about like anybody else but yourself, when you're sitting in the middle of it, at least that was my experience. I wasn't thinking like, oh, you know like I used to steal from everybody, right? And like I wouldn't care, it was just all about me and all about getting high, um and so you don't think about things, nothing crosses your mind. And I think like in order for somebody to come to the end of their disease, like it has to be an inside job, it has to be this is it, right? Like you have to be tired of your own crap, you have. And for me, that was my sister's death, and I had to be like in prison, during that time. Um, but yeah, and that's what I said, like, and you can't. Now watching my son go through some things, he struggles with marijuana and alcohol. Watching him, I'm learning like you can't win over it. You can't win over this addiction. You can't shame the person. You can't
Mhm.
love it out of them. You can't control it. So I feel like I'm just like beating my head against the wall. But on the flip side of that, like it's causing me to grow my faith, right? It's causing me to trust God a little more, and that's all I can do. And I lean into prayer. I lean into, whatever like that fills me up, the sweat lodge, the church, I do all of it. And yeah, so and it can't be nothing personal when it comes to us addicts, and when we overdose or when we're stealing from you or when we're lying to you, it has nothing to do with anybody else. It's the disease talking,
Right. I
Yeah.
see, well, in the past, in my previous position, um, a lot of the times we would see overdose happen when somebody gets out of jail, like right out of jail, you
Yeah.
know, or, well, yeah, like almost like the next day or two, and unfortunately, not that long ago, we did lose um, one of our girls um, that was in custody. And I won't say names because I respect their family and everything. And um, and that was the situation there. She was in custody and then bonded out um, early, and I think it was like the day after, maybe, and she overdosed. You know,
Yeah.
and that was so sad. Like that, man, that hit even me. As just somebody that worked with her, from the outside, like that affected even myself and a lot of our community. And so I think that's really important to talk about because that's the reality of it. That's the truth, and um, like I mentioned earlier, that's that's what we need to hear. We need to hear the truth. we need to hear, you know, the dirty of everything, because it's not pretty. Addiction isn't pretty. It's not fun. It's not glamorous. It's not, you know, something that you see in these movies where, you know, people are all cool and, you know, whatnot, being high, selling drugs. And I mean, it's a life and death thing. And it's traumatizing when we lose somebody to it. And so that's why I'm really grateful, you know, that I have this opportunity to really bring these stories to light, because I feel like there's so many people on the outside of things that don't understand what addiction is. And I've heard, you know, countless times, you know, it's not a disease, it's not this, it's not that. It's real. You know,
Yeah.
somebody can't just stop. And it's something deeper. And so, you know, and again, I appreciate everybody that has come on and shared their story. And to me, that's brave, you know, because there's a lot of things that come along with addiction. And just, I don't know, I can only imagine, like, I get more, I notice this because I do outreach at the powwows. I have a booth, and I'm going to kennel this weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited. I was in Wakbala on Saturday, and I find it fascinating that there's so many people out there that actually come up to my booth and they say, I really need help. Like, I need help, and I just don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And, you know, I try to share all the resources that I can. And then, you know, hey, hop on Facebook. Like, was it last week? I posted the different kind of apps that you can download to find meetings. And there's, and I do need to find a resource for like online meetings, because I don't have anything like that right now. Not sure if the same people are still doing the Zoom stuff that they were before,
Yeah,
but
there's this like app called Meeting Guide, and it has a blue chair on it, and it has like in-person meetings and online meetings.
perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you. Um, but yeah, I just want to get as much, you know, information out there for everybody. And so
Yes.
grateful for everybody, and you today. Again, I'm really grateful. I'm so thankful that you hopped on today. And I know I don't want to keep you anymore because I know you have another commitment. Hey, standing out your window.
Hey, I know. But
Um,
yeah,
so I just, you know, I always end by saying, you know, from my lodge to your lodge, and to everybody else out there, you know, thank you so much. And I hope that I get to catch up with you again, Margot, and see you again soon.
yeah,
To you at Good Road every now and then. Um,
yes,
and actually, please, I want you to share with everybody. I mean, you just graduated or had a really big accomplishment, right? There was something.
yes.
Yeah,
I graduated with my bachelor's degree from Minot State University as in addiction studies. I'm into my clinical training. I will be getting licensed by February. I'm taking my clinical training in next month. I'm taking my test. Just in case if I fail, then it gives me room to take it again, you know? Um, so hopefully to get licensed as a licensed addiction counselor, I'll be going back to UND next fall to pursue my master's degree. I want to be able to practice EMDR trauma therapy, and I have hopes and I got a vision. I want to go home. I want to go home to my reservation, and I want to share my education with people. I want to share my healing with people. I want to walk beside people, a lot of times, I had to unlearn, like, I always thought I was, as messed up and as dirty and whatnot as I was, right? Like the bottom, the gutter, drunk and junkie, right? But I still kind of thought I was better than everybody or something, you know? And, better than, I was always like, my disease and ego tells me I'm either better than you or I'm not good enough, right? Like, and now I'm just now like, I'm okay, right? I want to be able to show people that, right? We could walk beside each other and nobody's better than, nobody's beneath anybody. We're all the same. We're all just trying to walk each other home. You know what I mean? And we're all here to share that love, the love that's been freely given to us through Creator, right? And I want to bring that home, I want to share my healing. I want to share. There's so many more people like me that are stuck, whether it's the sexual abuse, whether it's the physical abuse, whether it's the addiction, whatever, you know what I mean? And I always say, like, I like to talk about stuff people don't like to talk about. You know what I mean? And the stuff that needs to be talked about, right? And it's not to like shame anybody. It's not to like put anybody down. It's people need that. They need to give themselves that voice, you know? People need to find their voice, and it's healing when you talk about it. But
Well,
yeah.
I hope so much to work with you when you're all done. Like I'm like so proud of you for, I mean, reaching those goals, and you still have more. You know what I mean? Like this isn't the end of it, and you're just gonna keep going. And I'm so thankful that you want to bring it home, because
Yes.
we need it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And if I can, anybody can, right? And if anybody's struggling, hit me up. I knew back in the day you guys, I probably wasn't the most approachable person, but now,
Keep up. Hey, just kidding.
and I promise I'm different now. And but yeah, I'm always there available for somebody to talk to. If you guys need somebody to talk to or whatever, just for me to sit and listen with people, whatever it is, just reach out. You guys, you're not alone. You're not in the struggle alone. There's people that care. There's people that love you. I love you. Yeah.
Amazing. You're amazing.
You're amazing too.
All right, girl. Well, you have a good time at your next commitment here.
Yes,
thank you so much.
thank you
Now
for having me.
I gotta go wipe off this greasy face. You see that?
Hey, just
Hey.
greasy, tons. Well,
my mustache is laying down.
Gotta wipe the forehead now before I go in here. No, but thank you for having me. I love you guys. Bye.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Yes. Bye.